Solution and for the addresses from the technology leaders of India's top telecom operators. And we would like to welcome Mr. Shyam Mardikar, Group CTO, Mobility Reliance Jio, who is a pioneer of mobility technology in India. And Mr. Mardikar plays a critical role in shaping Jio's mobility strategy and driving innovation at scale. So let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Shyam Mardikar for the operator address.
And as always, Shashi, pleasure and privilege. Thank you for this invitation. Nice to guest. And, 125 years back, this is the place, this is the time when Shashi was in his teens, that long back. This was the place from where the first wireless signal was sent. This is a place called St. John's in Newfoundland in 1901. Marconi actually sent transatlantic signal. The signal was a letter S, Morse code, 3 dots, and this is the point which is the easternmost point of the North American continent, almost 10,000 kilometers away across the Atlantic to the British Islands, and that was the distance it carried. And we've actually moved a long, long way from those 125 years. In fact, if you go back 45, 50 years, in 80s, you can see where the first wave of connectivity on wireless hit the world. We were 10 years late. We were not part of this. We actually came on the second part of the slide. But it was voice, it was 1G, it was connectivity, but more importantly, it actually tried to fit the physical or physiological requirement of communication, connecting person A to person B, and that is where it all started. 10 years later, 2G came in, India got into the big telecom bandwagon. Alluded to that, how fast we've grown from that time in the last 20-25 years. But if 1G was voice, 2G was text, SMS, and my older colleagues will recall capabilities like USSD and SMS were kind of revolutionary at that point of time. But that was 2G. But between these two generations, what happened is the world connected itself on a wireless pedestal. The first layer, the physical layer, which is, let's say, if you move to the requirement of human beings, it's like the basic law of the physiological needs, roti kapda and makan, if I could say that. These were the first two generations. 3G connected us to internet. 3G was the first generation which connected us to internet. And at the turn of the century, this came in. Smartphone came a bit later, and the screens got bigger. And this is where you could see issues like safety and security and issues like transmitting personal information, not only text but also pictures. 4G took it to a totally different generation. 4G actually took it to a capability where video became the mainstay of the communication. In fact, even today, since 4G came, even today, 75 to 78% of the data that gets transferred in the world, transmitted in the world is video. It's in the form of the movies which we stream, it is in the form of user-generated content which we upload, it is in the form of video calls which we do with each other, Teams meetings, Zoom calls we do with each other, 75 to 78% video. So 1G connected us, 2G brought it to text, 3G made it pictures, 4G made it video. 5G took it to a totally different standard. 5G empowered each one of us, and we're talking about self-optimizing networks, we're talking about personalized communication, we're talking about network slices, we're talking about private 5G. In fact, like the world agrees, we are right now at the midpoint of our 5G journey. This is just the interval. The second half, which is 5G 2.0, is about to come, and in the next 4-5 years before 6G hits us, we will actually see a totally different turnaround in the way 5G is getting consumed. It will move from a primarily B2C kind of communication pedestal to a more life-changing, and again, I think we've talked about hospitals, we've talked about agriculture, we've talked about education. The deepness in which, the pervasiveness in which it is going to go is going to fundamentally change the way the next generation is going to hit us. And that is 6G. 6G is kind point of time. The lucidity around standards, the lucidity around frequency bands, the lucidity around services. We have this, as an industry, this habit of calling the next generation the solution for all evils. And as we get closer to next generation, we try and realize, we finally get to realize that yes, it has its own set of challenges, right from the infrastructure requirement to device requirement to the distribution of compute over the edge and things like that. But the good story is that as time progresses, and especially with the hypercompute through AI that is hitting us. In fact, all the images which are put in these presentations are a 30-minute effort on AI. Now imagine creating these images maybe 2 years back for this kind of presentation. I mean, and that is how AI is kind of failing us. That is how AI is using the compute to make our decision systems, to make our delivery systems, to make our consumption systems relevant, to make it to the last mile to the end user, irrespective of what vector, what industry he is part of, and making his life on the digital pedestal easy. So these are the generations working. And I was thinking about the famous Maslow's law, and if you actually look at these 5 6 generations, it very sweetly kind of resonates with what Maslow talked about, his own hierarchy on evolution of human beings, right from physical and logical needs to the self-actualization. And if you map layer by layer, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, you actually realize that we are in telecom coming very, very close to actualizing the industry through telecommunications. So much coupling of digital and humans, of AI and humans is going to unveil itself over the next few years, that our understanding of the way we live, our understanding of the way the planet works end to end is actually going to get defined by the communication that is still happening. And that is where the actualization comes. Because let's understand, we're talking about speeds in 3G era, hyperspeeds in 4G era, even hyperspeeds in 5G era. Beyond the point, all of that is done and dusted. We have speeds now. What do you do with 100, 200, 400 Mbps speeds in your pocket? You don't need more than 15, 20 Mbps for a 4K video. You can download movies, 2 hours movies in a matter of seconds now. What else is needed? So the functional capability of technology is a given now. And that is where we move from the esteem layer to self-actualization layer. Because almost everything, right from physical connectivity to right speed to right flavor of consumption, is all given through 5G. And what is next is something which is unimaginable. It is something which is so much more coupled with the way we will work, the way we will change the world. It can be about a greener planet, it can be about a more digital divide rich planet, it could be about people innovating themselves over what AI and what hypercompute is going to give them. But functional capability of communication will now take a backseat because that is all given. And in this parlance, if you see what are the key differentiators in 5G, I will get a very slight bit technical now, but at least it will give us a perspective, because what is going to happen in 3-4 years if we take a heed of that, and if we actually go around as an industry, creating an ecosystem that is going to develop this, we will actually be one of the largest global leaders, like our Honorable Minister keeps on talking about. Standalone architecture is a must. One thing which we realized in 5G is with these variety of architectural topology, NSA2, NSA1, NSA3, SA, operators have chosen to do whatever is implemented. And in doing so, they have not been able to unleash the capability which 5G was envisaged. So this is, I mean, we are kind of spoiled for choices on 5G. And this is where I think we are not in sync with what maybe the thought leaders in 5G wanted us to do. So if you can understand this, and if you can get to a very, very clear topology and architecture saying this is how, and this is where the standard bodies, this is where the government organization, this is where the IPUT, CGTB should come together and say, yes, we know we kind of spread out thin in 5G, that's a big learning, let's go back and let's create something which is very focused to what is needed. And hence standalone becomes a must going forward. Air interfaces for the first time in the world will be 5G native. And what do you mean by that? Till 5G, one of the biggest definition is how is a 4G radio different than a 5G radio? How is a 4G radio different than a 3G radio? You've heard about GSM as an air interface standard, CDMA as an air interface standard, OFDM as an air interface standard. For the first time, again, like I said, because the functional utility is gone, 6G will not bother about what kind of waveforms are there. 6G will have a native intelligence. The scheduler will be intelligent enough to understand whether it is serving an individual for a video streaming, or whether it is getting a satellite serve a particular home, or whether it is tracking a tracking a moving car from a location and optimization of road perspective. And all of them will require, depending on where they are, how they are served, a different kind of video waveform. And the first time 6G will be brought together. So one size fits all will stop from 6G. And these will be natively AI, driven right in the radio itself. The scheduler will decide what needs to be done. This will be the second big earth-shattering change. Satellite will not be separate. The non-terrestrial networks and terrestrial networks will not only complement each other, they are complementing each other today, but they will start talking to each other, so that in the real sense, the service continuity, in the real sense, business continuity will will happen. And that is where the standards will evolve, saying that we are not only talking about a terrestrial radio transmission. I wanted to use the word extraterrestrial, but non-terrestrial is good enough from a standard perspective. But when these two come together, we will actually get to something which is unheard of. 100.0% of ubiquity of coverage, a 100.0% of continuity of communication, depending on what you need, how you need, where you need, and what you need. That is where frequency bands are getting bigger. Most of you know that as we move from 2G to 4G to 6G, now going forward, we're getting into higher and higher, we're getting into terahertz kind of space. And what is going to happen? We will need super power antennas, we will need hyper dense antennas. The electronics of antennas will also become more important than the electronics of radio. It is starting to define coverage now going forward. Hundreds of beams together, hundreds of beams directed to hundreds of different services, each beam doing a different job. One serving a mobile, one serving a car, and one serving a home, with totally three different set of services, three different set of latencies. How are you going to use it? And this is where, while we understand this from one slideshow presentation perspective, we need to realize the amount of awareness of the customer service, amount of awareness of the network that needs to get into the radio to understand what it is going to serve, how it is going to serve, and how much it is going to serve. Lastly, and this has been a pain which we have been ignoring so far. I mean, we in ICC finals at Reliance Jio, we consume 50 crore GBs of data on a single day. World record. I think closest at some point of time, China Mobile came, so they didn't cross 45 crore. And in one day we get, and this is one operator. So imagine if we are more than half the share, country as a whole must have done 100 crore GB. Now, the share of uplink in that 100 crore GB, people in the stadium, you look at IPL matches, you look at ICC matches, you look at tourist spots. Now, this share of uplink is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. People are uploading videos, people are uploading photos, video calls are happening, and all of that. Theoretically, the telecom networks are designed for a downlink intensive proposal, because we take from the web, we take from the internet. We have now realized that uplink now needs to be taken seriously, either through better layers, better understanding of the devices, or maybe a brand new supplemental uplink band, which will be dedicated for uplink. Because without that, in next 3-4 years, actually there is no hope to just hold a uplink consumption. Our uplink consumption